From Alan Mead, who built this physique after losing a leg in World War I, to Indian bodybuilders using forgotten training methods to get into incredible shape. These were some of the most jacked men before steroids even existed. At the centre of it all lies a question: how did they do it, and what can we learn from them today? This was Steve Reeves in 1947. To many back then, Reeves had the ideal physique, and the photographer of this picture would later call the shot the perfection in the skies. But today, there are doubters that say, just as the background behind him, there are enhancements at play. Because on May 2nd, 1935, 𝗠𝗫𝗀𝗁 and his colleagues found a way to isolate the male hormone testosterone. And in that same year, two independent teams found a way to synthesize it, meaning testosterone could now be injected. Long before Reeves won his first Mr. America title, he was likely natural, but if we're to be extremely skeptical, even before the synthesis of testosterone, there were many more muscular people using unorthodox techniques, forgotten training and diet methods, detailed in lesser known books. To learn about their ways, we have to go all the way back to when weightlifting first started. Lifting weights has been a thing since ancient times. Greek athletes used stone altars to jump farther and get stronger. Basically, early dumbbells. But weight training became even more relevant in the 1800s, when the biggest form of entertainment was the circus, which offered a display of amazing stunts. And from this, strongman was born. These men tried to prove their strength by demonstrating incredible feats, using whatever equipment they had available. But one strongman realized the audience wasn't just impressed by strength, but the extraordinary body that could produce it. That man was the world's first modern bodybuilder, Eugene Sandow. Sandow was born in Prussia in 1867, and when he was 10, he traveled with his parents to Italy for a holiday. Here, Sandow became mesmerized by the sculptures in museums and art galleries. It was from this moment that young Sandow decided that if training could do it, I would become a strongman. And that's exactly what he did, performing stunts such as lifting a pony overhead with one arm, bench pressing 269 pounds with one hand, and breaking tensile strength machines by simply being too strong. But Sandow had something that made him stand out from the other strongmen at the time. He had taken measurements in Italy to do something which most people thought was impossible, to look like a statue. By doing this, Sandow became the first person to popularize the term bodybuilding. And fast forward to 1901, he would set up the world's first bodybuilding show. And it wasn't long until others followed in his footsteps. Bobby Pandour took the world by storm when his pictures were published in the French magazine 𝗕𝗅𝗄𝗄. He had become even more famous by performing acrobatic stunts and posing alongside his brother, which they called the Pandour Brothers Act, reportedly paying him up to $8,000 a week in today's money. Quickly, due to him being a showman posing on stage, and because of their similar build, Pandour started to be compared to Sandow, and inevitably, discussions started to arise. Who had the better physique, Pandour or Sandow? But were these men really the peak of their time? Were there not others, now forgotten by history, that rivaled these greats? Billy Ralph might have been one of those people, who even today wouldn't look misplaced on a natural bodybuilding podium.
Seriously? It's like you're photoshopped.
Unfortunately, little remains preserved of his life. Someone we do know about is Alan Mead, who managed to sculpt one of the most ripped physiques of his era. And he did this while having lost a leg in World War I. He was so impressive, in fact, he was known by the nickname the Human Anatomy Chart. And when we turn our eye to professional sports, Otto Ārko may have had one of the most aesthetic wrestling physiques of all time. And it wasn't like he was a bad wrestler either, as he was known to be the pound-for-pound greatest wrestler of his time. Or take this athlete, Eugene Burgess, whose abs, arms and shoulders wouldn't look bad next to a modern influencer. We know that he competed in the complete athlete competition in France in 1914, but apart from that, his legacy remains untold. A common criticism is that while these guys looked good, they weren't massive and often weighed below 170 pounds, but there were others that broke this mold. We could call them the mass monsters before steroids. George Hackenschmidt, known as the Russian Lion, was one of the most jacked people of his time, standing at 5'9" and weighing around 200 to 220 pounds. How did he do it? Well, George helped popularize two game-changing exercises that we still use today. And using these, he not only became a wrestling champion, but a champion in weightlifting too. He would even set a world record in weightlifting by shoulder pressing 243 pounds. And as a wrestler, he would become the first unified heavyweight champion and one of the most dominant of all time. So what was his secret? He revealed this in his book, The Way to Live, where he showcased the floor press, which would later turn into the famous bench press. And the hack squat, a direct rival of 𝗕𝗁𝗁, was 𝗕𝗅𝗁𝗁, whose mother was scared of him dying young due to his frail figure. That was before he would become an Estonian legend, with folk tales spreading after his death, stating he had achieved his strength by washing his face in magical spring water. But perhaps the biggest mass monster was Hermann 𝗕𝗁𝗁. 𝗕𝗁𝗁 was 6'1" and would weigh between 265 and 293 pounds. Though he wasn't as shredded as Sando and Pandor, 𝗕𝗁𝗁 still had a relatively lean physique, but his body was certainly not the most impressive thing about him. Before I put Hermann's strength into context, take a look at this video, where Larry Wheels, an enhanced powerlifter, attempts to break a Guinness World Record for a one-handed deadlift with 675 pounds. Larry's strap breaks, and he never attempts this lift again. To this day, over 100 years later, and before the invention of steroids, Hermann still holds this world record by lifting 664 pounds, and he didn't even need straps to do it. But Arthur Saxon rivaled his strength in every way. As at only 200 pounds, he set multiple world records, like lifting 370 pounds overhead with just one arm. But perhaps most impressively, he probably holds the world record for the most amount of weight lifted or smashed out of your mind, as he was known for his heavy drinking. Someone with more unconventional strength was the Russian Alexander Zas, who bent the iron bars of his cell when he was held as a prisoner of war during World War I. And he managed to escape prison, not just once, but 4 different times. And in his free time, he was known for walking his horse, literally. It's clear that all of these men achieved incredible aesthetics and strength at a time when there was very little knowledge around training. And this leaves us to wonder, what forgotten training methods can we learn from them? You might be wondering where all of these men even got their knowledge from. That's where this man, Professor Attila, comes in, who offered $1,000 to a charity if a physical instructor was not using his methods. So what do these systems look like? Attila would promote the use of light dumbbell exercises, showing movements like this in his book. This would resonate with Sando, who later became his pupil, and they would sell these dumbbells to the public, encouraging them to lift. Importantly, these dumbbells probably didn't do much for gaining a huge amount of muscle, and they likely promoted it for financial gain. But what Attila did do is introduce a variety of movements that, if done with challenging weight, could produce serious muscle mass. But Attila was not the only one that would produce his own system. Indian bodybuilders did so too. This book, published in 1930, shows many of the classic movements we know today, done with a more challenging weight, while still showcasing many exercises that you won't see done at your average Planet Fitness. But more importantly, this book would also touch on a forgotten practice you'll rarely see today. Muscle control refers to the contraction and relaxation of muscles at will. These men were able to isolate every single muscle, even isolating specific parts of their abdominal muscles. And these Indian bodybuilders swore by a combination of weight training and muscle control to reach their physiques. However, the practice of muscle control could have deadly consequences, such as this man who reached life's title screen after a cart with 24 men was driven over him, and he was unable to contract his abs properly. Despite this freak accident, the display of muscle control was a huge hit amongst the public, and Indians would not be the only ones to display it. 𝗕𝗁𝗁𝗄 developed a standout physique with his own system for muscle control, which he would create together with 𝗕𝗁𝗄𝗃, calling it the 𝗕𝗁𝗁𝗄 system. And that wasn't the only odd thing that these old school legends would do. This is the 𝗕𝗁𝗁𝗄 lift. Just as the name implies, this lift is all about getting 2 separate weights overhead in any way possible. Arthur Saxon managed to get a combined weight of 448 pounds overhead using a barbell and a kettlebell. A similar lift was the bench press, where a weight was lifted from the shoulder overhead using the whole body. But perhaps the heaviest lift was the back lift, with strongman 𝗏𝗏𝗄𝗃 reportedly lifting over 4,000 pounds. What these men also had are forgotten pieces of equipment Take Fred Rollon, who's often referred to as the man that never lifted a weight. Instead, he trained with chest expanders, which were like the original resistance bands of the 1920s. Clearly, these guys had both some very advanced methods for their time, and some incredibly goofy ones too. So what are some of the lessons we can steal from these lifters today? These men proved that building muscle doesn't need to be complicated. None of them did everything optimally. They lifted consistently, ate simple whole foods, moved often, spent time in the sun, and rested well. And because of that, many of them stayed strong and healthy for life. The truth is, the basics have always worked. And today, we actually have more advantages than they did. Better equipment, better science, and more resources at our fingertips. These men raised the standard of what the human body could be, and they did it without steroids, proving that dedication could build a physique worthy of admiration even a century later.